The night was colder than usual, and silence wrapped the narrow streets like an invisible veil. It was the kind of silence that makes every step echo, every breath feel louder than it should. Demet Özdemir walked slowly, almost aimlessly, yet her heart knew exactly where it was taking her. Without realizing it, her feet carried her to a familiar place, a neighborhood she once knew well, the one where Can Yaman's house stood like a fortress of memories. For days, she had struggled with emotions she could no longer suppress. The world saw her as strong, radiant, untouchable, but deep inside, she was restless. That night, she couldn't stay home any longer. Something inside whispered to her, urging her to move, to go somewhere she swore she would never go again. And so she went. The air smelled of rain, even though the storm had not yet begun. Her hair clung softly to her face as the damp breeze brushed against her cheeks. Every corner of that street reminded her of moments once shared with him, laughter, arguments, stolen glances, the little things that build a love story no one ever truly forgets. She paused near the tall iron gates of his residence. She didn't ring the bell, didn't send a message. She simply stood there, half hidden in the shadows, as if waiting for a miracle. A part of her prayed he might step outside, just for a second, and see her. Maybe then the distance that had grown between them would finally shrink. And yet, fate played a cruel trick that night. Because while she stood there, quietly hoping for something she could not even name, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance. A black car, familiar and elegant, rolled slowly into the street. Her heart stopped. She knew it. That car, those tinted windows, it was him. Inside the vehicle, Can Yaman sat silently in the back seat. His driver knew the roads by heart, gliding smoothly toward the house. Can leaned his head against the cool glass, lost in his own thoughts, thoughts he didn't dare voice out loud. Memories of her still haunted him, her smile, her voice, her touch, but he fought hard against them, burying them under layers of pride and silence. And then it happened. His eyes flickered outside, and for a fleeting second, his heart betrayed him. There, under the dim glow of the streetlight, stood a figure he would never mistake. Demet. She wasn't smiling, she wasn't moving, she was just there, looking fragile, looking real, looking like the past he both longed for and feared. The silence inside the car grew heavier. Can's chest tightened, his pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed at him to open the door, to call her name, to erase the distance with a single step. But his pride was louder. His pain was heavier. His anger, his confusion, all of it clashed within him until he leaned forward, closer to his driver, and whispered the words that sealed the night. "Turn back." The driver hesitated only for a second before nodding. The car slowed, then shifted direction, gliding away from the street where Demet still stood. Can didn't look back. He couldn't. Maybe if he had, things would have been different. Maybe if he had allowed himself just one moment of weakness, everything could have changed. But he didn't. And so, as the taillights disappeared into the distance, Demet realized the truth. He had seen her. He knew she was there. And still, he chose to leave. That was the night when everything could have changed. But instead, it became the hidden story no one ever told, until now. The street was empty again, but for Demet, it felt like the world had just collapsed around her. The hum of the car's engine still echoed faintly in her ears, though the vehicle itself had long vanished into the night. She stood frozen, her arms wrapped around herself, unsure if the shiver running through her body came from the cool night air or from the weight of what had just happened. He had seen her. She was sure of it. The way his car slowed for a moment, the way the tinted window shifted slightly as if someone inside leaned closer, those weren't coincidences. Demet knew him too well to mistake it. His silence was deliberate. His decision was clear. He had chosen to turn away. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of the house that held so many memories of passion, of laughter, of arguments that ended with whispered apologies. She clenched her fists, trying to steady her breath. The world might think she had moved on, that she had built a new life, but nights like this revealed a different truth. A part of her was still chained to him, to Can, to the man who had both given her the brightest joy and the deepest pain. Meanwhile, inside the car that now sped through another street, Can sat with his eyes closed. His chest ached with the decision he had just made, yet he told himself it was the right one. What good would come from stopping? What words could possibly heal what had been broken? In his mind, seeing her again would only rip open wounds he had fought so hard to close. But his heart disagreed. His heart replayed the image of her standing there, vulnerable yet strong, as if the universe itself had pulled them into the same place at the same time. He wanted to believe it was fate. But Can Yaman had never been a man who allowed fate to dictate his choices. He clenched his jaw, whispering under his breath words even he didn't fully believe, "It's better this way." Back at the gate, Demet finally turned away. She walked slowly, her steps heavy, each one echoing like a farewell she never wanted to give. The rain began to fall, light at first, then harder, soaking her hair, her clothes, but she didn't care. If anything, the rain felt like a companion, a witness to her silent heartbreak. She remembered nights when the rain meant something different, when Can would pull her close under an umbrella, shielding her with his coat, whispering that nothing else mattered as long as they were together. Those memories stabbed at her now, each one sharper than the last. How had it all changed so quickly? How had love turned into this unbearable distance? As she disappeared down the street, a neighbor peeked out from a nearby window, curious about the young woman lingering in front of Can's house. But Demet's figure vanished before any questions could be asked, swallowed by the night. For her, it wasn't just another walk, it was a silent confrontation, one where both of them had seen the other, yet neither dared to bridge the gap. Later, alone in his room, Can poured himself a glass of water, though what he truly needed was something stronger. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, his wet hair clinging to his forehead, his eyes dark with regret. He whispered to himself, almost angrily, why was she there? He wanted answers, but none came. Instead, silence filled the air, heavier than ever. For Demet, back in her own home, the night was restless. She sat by the window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass, each drop reminding her of what could have been. She asked herself over and over, why didn't he stop? Why didn't he say anything? But deep inside, she knew. Pride had spoken louder than love that night. And so the story remained hidden, buried between two hearts too stubborn to surrender, too proud to admit the truth. But secrets like these have a way of finding light, no matter how long they stay in the shadows. Demet sat silently on the edge of her bed, staring at the rain sliding down the window. Every drop against the glass felt like a memory knocking at her heart, forcing her to remember a night she thought she had buried forever. It was the same house, the same street, but a very different time. It was a summer evening years ago. The air was warm, the city alive with lights and laughter. Can had driven her home, and instead of leaving right away, they lingered at the gate. Demet had laughed softly, telling him, go, you have an early shoot tomorrow. But Can had only smirked, that stubborn fire in his eyes, and whispered, not until I know you're safely inside. That night, the gate had been a place of love, of safety, of promises. They had stood there for hours, talking, laughing, sometimes falling silent just to listen to each other breathe. She remembered the way he leaned closer, brushing her hair back from her face, telling her, no matter what happens, we'll always find our way back. Now, as the storm raged outside, Demet realized how cruel time could be. Because years later, at that same gate, everything was different. No whispered promises, no laughter. Only silence. Only pride. The man who once swore he would never walk away had just told his driver to turn back. On the other side of the city, Can lay awake in his own bed, replaying the exact same memory. He remembered her smile under the streetlight, the way she had looked at him like he was the only man in the world. That smile had been his anchor once, the thing that kept him grounded through chaos. But tonight, instead of anchoring him, the memory was suffocating him. He clenched his fists, asking himself again and again, why didn't I stop? Why didn't I get out of the car? Deep inside, he knew the answer. Because seeing her again would demand courage. Courage to confront what had been broken, to admit that he still cared, to risk being hurt again. And Can, the man everyone thought was fearless, had chosen the coward's way, silence. Demet, too, wrestled with her own thoughts. She wiped away tears angrily, whispering to herself, "What was I thinking? Why did I go there? What did I expect?" Yet her heart betrayed her. She hadn't gone there to fight or to demand answers. She had gone there because, no matter how much time had passed, a part of her still hoped. Hoped that maybe, just maybe, he would see her and remember the promises they once made. It was almost tragic, because both of them, in their separate rooms, were thinking the same thing. They were remembering the same night, feeling the same longing, drowning in the same silence. But pride stood like a wall between them. Neither would make the first move. Neither would admit the truth out loud. And perhaps that was the cruelest part of all. Because sometimes love doesn't end with betrayal, or with anger. Sometimes it ends quietly, with silence, with hesitation, with the simple act of turning away. As the rain intensified, lightning illuminated the city for a brief moment. For Demet, sitting alone in her darkened room, the storm outside felt small compared to the one inside her chest. And for Can, lying sleepless in his empty apartment, the echoes of what he didn't say were louder than the thunder rolling above. Both of them, in the same city, under the same storm, were asking themselves the same heartbreaking question: how did we get here? The next morning, the city woke up as if nothing had happened. The rain had washed the streets clean, but for Demet and Can, the storm had left a mark that couldn't be erased. Demet sat by her kitchen table, staring at a cup of tea she never drank. The night replayed in her mind in loops. His car slowing down, his silhouette in the back seat, and then the moment the taillights faded into the distance. Every detail gnawed at her. He saw me. I know he did. And still, he told the driver to leave. She opened her phone, scrolling aimlessly, but every post she saw felt hollow. Social media was buzzing with her photos from a recent event, with comments about her dress, her smile, her supposed happiness. No one knew the truth. Behind that smile was a woman who had spent the night standing in the rain, waiting for a man who chose silence over love. Meanwhile, across town, whispers had already begun. A neighbor, who had peeked from her window the night before, casually mentioned to a friend that she thought she saw Demet outside Can's house. By afternoon, the rumor had made its way to a tabloid journalist, who eagerly scribbled down notes. Why was Demet Özdemir near Can Yaman's house at midnight? It was the kind of headline that could break the internet in minutes. Inside his own apartment, Can scrolled through his phone too, reading mindless news to distract himself. But when he stumbled upon the rumor, already circulating online, his chest tightened. The article didn't have photos, but the words were enough to set fire to the speculation. Fans were already debating, are they back together? Why was she there? Did he see her? He tossed his phone onto the couch, running his hands over his face. He hated the gossip, but more than that, he hated himself. Because the truth behind the rumors was far more painful than any headline. Yes, she had been there. Yes, he had seen her. And yes, he had turned away. Demet's phone buzzed with messages from friends. Some were concerned, others curious. She replied to none. She wasn't ready to explain. How could she explain something even she didn't fully understand? That she had gone there with no plan, no script, only hope. And that hope had been shattered with a single, whispered order from him: turn back. The distance between them had never felt greater. And yet, ironically, they were both thinking of the same thing. Both replaying the same scene. Both carrying the same wound. That night would forever remain their hidden story. A story not written in interviews, not told on television, not captured in glossy magazine spreads. It was a story whispered only in their hearts, too raw, too painful to be shared. Demet, in the privacy of her thoughts, admitted to herself what she would never say out loud: she still loved him. But love wasn't always enough. Not when pride stood taller than longing. Not when silence spoke louder than words. Can, alone in his apartment, stared at the city lights outside his window. He knew he would be haunted by the image of her standing there. He had told himself he left because it was easier, because it was safer. But deep inside, he knew the truth, he had left because he was afraid. Afraid of what her presence would do to him. Afraid that one look into her eyes would destroy the walls he had built so carefully around his heart. Sometimes, the greatest tragedies are not the storms we endure but the moments we let slip away. And that night, as the rain fell and the car turned back, they both lost something they could never recover. The world would never know the full truth. To outsiders, they were just two stars, two names linked by a past romance, two actors with lives that had long moved on. But behind the cameras, behind the headlines, there was a silence that screamed louder than any scandal. Because love doesn't always end with a final kiss or a bitter goodbye. Sometimes it ends on a quiet street, in the glow of a passing car, with two hearts that see each other but refuse to move closer. And that, dear viewers, is the hidden truth behind the night Demet Özdemir stood outside his house, and Can Yaman told the driver to turn back. A story of love, pride, silence, and a chance that will never come again.